Krishna, Hare Rama,
Om Bhagyanat
Nirandasya Jnanjalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Swami Shri Bhakti Vedanta Prabhupada Te Namaha. Gururakyam Shirasi Jeta Shaktya Desha Swarupine Hare Krishna Mantrena Prashyatya Prachyatane Vishvataya Pravayaya Nirakarunya Mutaye Shri Bhagavatam Madhurya Gita Jnana Pradayane Gauda Shri Rupa Siddhanta Saraswati Nishe Radha Krishna Padam Bhoja Vringaya Gureva Devam Divyasanam Suchandavanam Balarga Chelanchitam Sandhanam Vapuram Sareka Varanam Bharakya Vidambudim Shri Siddhanta Nihim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Varam Vande Tam Shivaram Bhavika Sharanam Yashishwaram Shivam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Storito Govardhai Pushpavanto Chitro Sandrotamono Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Sharanastako Sukala Paramanando Sundaro Subhalapriyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Bhakta Kancha Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai Bhakti Raksaka Sridhara
Swami Maharaja Vibha Mamotsvati ki
Jai.
Shri Bhakti Vinod Parivar ki
Jai.
Shri Radha Madhav ki
Jai.
Bhakti Vrinda ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Jai.
You have the liturgy in the morning.
Liturgy for the morning.
Yeah.
Liturgy for the morning.
Did you see? Is that it?
No, that's she's getting it. Just the sheets.
No. There's other things we see also. Maybe they should all be here.
Yeah, that should all be in there.
Should be. This looks like it's not here. Yeah, here.
Get the,
Okay.
the blue book, the blue binder.
I have it. So we gathered on the auspicious occasion of commemorating the appearance of Pujapad Bhakti Maharaj. Srila Swami Maharaja ki Jai.
Jai.
And Avibhav, of course, means the appearance, so celebrating his appearance day. And I'd like to speak a little bit about the appearance of Sridhar Maharaj in my life, in our lives subsequently, which is not different from, but an extension of his appearance in the world, here in Gaudamandala, in the land of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Pampaniya. Came to reside, of course, in Navadvip after having joined the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and traveled fairly extensively throughout the Indian subcontinent, representing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada and his mission in Madras and Bombay and Kurukshetra, to name a few places. And I believe it was in Bombay that he met Vishnupad Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who was living there, or doing business there at times for his family, and also as a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur by householder, and Pujapad Maharaj was a sannyasi. So they met and they developed some affinity for one another, and continued on, of course, after the passing of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which was a traumatic time for the mission that underwent various difficulties thereafter. And in the midst of that, the two gurus in my life, prominent gurus, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and Bhakti Raksaka Swami Maharaj lived together in Calcutta in Prabhupada's apartment. He had two apartments. Was it number 6 Banerjee Lane or something like that? And I guess he had 6 and then 7 or something. So he provided an apartment for Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj that served as some type of a preaching base. And there, together in that setting, they wrote their commentaries on Bhagavad Gita and other things. Sridhar Maharaj was, of course, famous for his original Sanskrit compositions that are quite remarkable and reminiscent of the works of the founding acharyas of the Sampradaya, the 6 Goswamis, Krishnadas Kaviraj, and so forth. His works like Premadama Stotram, his commentary on Gayatri Mantra, and so forth. And so anyway, there they spent some time together, and considerable time, 6 years, and It was at that time that Prabhupada wanted to form a mission with Sridhara Maharaj at the head. But he was in his own language, a backward pushing type of a person, not wanting to be in the front and in the limelight. And it was in this spirit that he went to Ekachakra, and dismissing such propositions put forward by Prabhupada and the requests of a number of people, Prabhupada's sister, for example, for Diksha, Mantra Diksha, she received Harinam from Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta. She approached Sridhara Maharaj for Diksha, and he refused, not out of any lack of her qualification, but out of the sense of his own lack of qualification and his own humility and backward pushing nature that, as I say, caused him not to want to be in the forefront, in the limelight. And so with that, I say in mind, he went to Ekachakra and made a petition to Nityananda Prabhu to reside in Navadvip peacefully and conduct the culture of his inner life. And he got an impression in his heart from Nityananda Prabhu that translated into something like this: you want my mercy, but you don't give your mercy to anybody. So he was struck by that, and then he reasoned about it and thought that, okay, that means I can stay in Navadvip, but not at the cost of, but at the cost, I should say, of giving my mercy to others. But that doesn't mean I have to run hither and thither everywhere to collect people up. But if they come to me, I won't refuse them. This was his position. And there he sat. Meanwhile, after some time, of course, Prabhupada Bhaktivedanta Swami started his own campaign. So quite some years later, he took sannyas. He was so intimate with Sridhara Maharaj that he asked Sridhara Maharaj for sannyas. And Sridhara Maharaj personally told him the story, sitting alone with him once. He said that Swami Maharaj asked me for sannyas, but I was reluctant to give for two reasons. One, because giving up the family life suddenly is something that perhaps after having been doing, one should spend a little time and not quickly jump into another ashram that the sannyasa ashram. And this is someone speaking as he explained to me, who knew the family of Prabhupada very intimately. He lived there for 6 years. He saw how he conducted himself in relation to his wife, and would argue at times, and sometimes he would come in and break it up and so forth. He explained these things to me, so he knew them very intimately. And you know, so you see them arguing, and Prabhupada would argue on religious principles. He would want to spend time preaching, of course, and he had a real heart-burning heart's desire to be more involved in the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Ultimately, it came to he or me, as Prabhupada put it, with relation to his wife, who on one occasion, I believe when he was in Bombay, and dutifully proceeding with his business that was supporting the family, but taking every spare moment that workplace and lifestyle afforded him to be involved in the mission. His wife, in his absence, sold his Bhagavatam for tea biscuits. Bhagavatams were not as readily available in those times as they are today. And of course, it was an edition with all the different commentaries and so forth. So Prabhupada found out about that. He said, "It's tea or me? You want the tea?" And as I said, "We got the me." We got Prabhupada. So anyway, Sridhar Maharaj said he was just being honest with me and candid, and he said, another argument, he wants to take sannyas, he's come to me, and so I thought maybe I should, hold back a little bit and encourage patience, but also he said, I also had the fear that by this time I had my moth in Navadvip, I had my place, I was living there peacefully, doing my bhajan, and I had some fear that his family would come and cause a big disturbance. Our father, you did this, and so forth. So it was really based on the intimacy that he had with him, and his whole, extended itself in the form of family and children and so forth that he knew and whatnot, that he thought, I should hold off and let's be a little patient about this. And so it was very charming in the way that he was telling it to me. And he said, but then he couldn't wait for that. He went off to Vrindavan and asked Keshava Maharaj, who Sridhar Maharaj had given sannyas to, and he took sannyas. Of course, he did actually wait for some time. It did take some time to manifest from that point, but he took sannyas from Bhakti Pragya and Keshava Maharaj, Bhakti Pragya and Keshava, Bhakti Kijai. And as I said, he had received the sannyas mantra from Prabhupada Sridhar Maharaj. He had asked, he was involved when, perhaps it was he that who started to refer to our Prabhupada as Bhakti Siddhanta based on his writing for the mission that was going on. And then some godbrothers complained, you can't call him Bhakti Siddhanta. And Sridhar Maharaj intervened and said, I can understand their sentiment, still he's very qualified. I suggest we call him Bhakti Vedanta, which has more or less the same meaning. So he had this name, Bhakti Vedanta, before he took sannyas as a kind of a title. It was not uncustomary, it was customary, I should say, of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur to give titles to his different disciples, Bhakti Ranjan, Bhakti this, Bhakti that, besides their initiated names. So this was after the departure of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Keshava Maharaj, Keshava Maharaj or Goswami Maharaj, one of the two, had started to refer to Prabhupada in this way and praise Goswami Maharaj. But they were three of a kind, so to speak. Sridhar Maharaj used to say that he would speak and Goswami Maharaj would do something else. And Prabhupada would collect.
Prabhupada would collect, yeah.
He would give the lecture, and I forget what Goswami Maharaj would do in Bombay, and then Prabhupada would come and collect from everybody. Donations. It's from based on the speaking, so forth, preaching engagement. So at any rate, Bhakti Pragya and Keshava Maharaj, he was intimately involved with them too. After all, Prabhupada had joined Keshava Maharaj's mission. Before he took sannyas, he became a member of the mission, and he was given the charge to make the magazine, I forget the name of it, of the Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti, the mission of Bhakti Pragya and Keshava Maharaj, who is famous now. Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Maharaj was a member of, a disciple of Srila Keshava Maharaj. Prabhupada was the made editor of that magazine. And ultimately his ambitions for a magazine that would exceed the circulation and scope, the word I want, scope of the magazine at the time.
Gaudiya Patrika?
Yeah, it might have been Gaudiya Patrika. Prabhupada had a vision of a magazine would exceed the circulation scope of that magazine. Ultimately, he went on his own. He took sannyas from Keshava Maharaj and started his Back to Godhead magazine. She wanted to make like the Life magazine or Time magazine of spirituality in the world, and big ideas. And this is just an aside I'm speaking about it. He was given the title Bhakti Vedanta, and Pujapad Keshava Maharaj he liked that insight and suggestion of Pujapad Sridhara Maharaj, who was very much known for giving names and details like that are beautiful aspects of the culture, and names with significance that and whatnot. He considered it like a titular, adjustment that he was good at, some detail thing, nothing of any substance. And he personally told me that when he asked me, and I asked to hear the sannyas mantra from him, because Prabhupada gave it on a piece of paper, and he didn't chant it in the ear. So those who had come, my godbrothers, and taken sannyas with Sridhara, said, "You should hear the mantra." I had absolutely no objection. And so he said, "I will do if you like." And your Swami Maharaj wanted me to make sometimes some titular adjustments like this. And he's given everything but some technical thing I can, like a small thing like that I can do. And he's really done everything. So at any rate, the title Bhakti Vedanta, which Sridhara Maharaj gave, Keshava Maharaj really liked this idea. And he eventually then named all of his sannyas disciples Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Maharaj, Bhakti Vedanta Tripurari Maharaj, Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Bhakti Vedanta this Maharaj, Bhakti Vedanta that Maharaj. This was the system of Bhakti Siddhanta. When he gave sannyas, he gave a name Bhakti and a 2 or 3 syllable word or name that somewhat described the person. So Bhakti, Pramod would be the 2-letter word. And then Puri Maharaj. Puri was the sannyas name. Sridhara is the sannyas name. Swami is the sannyas name. Tripurari is the sannyas name. Bon, Aranya, 108 of them, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had sannyas names. So the name, word Bhakti, such and such, Swami Maharaj, Goswami Maharaj, Sridhara Maharaj, Narayana Maharaj, Tripurari Maharaj, Paramabhiti Maharaj, Aranya Maharaj, Ashram Maharaj, so forth. So that was the system. We liked that system. When we met Sridhara Maharaj, it was very, very nice. The Keshava Maharaj so much liked the naming idea, the title given by Sridhara Maharaj to harmonize the situation where Prabhupada would continue to be honored, but not at the cost of some of godbrothers feeling somewhat their sentiments trampled on, because they had one Bhakti Siddhanta in their life. Among all the sannyasis that have arisen out of all the streams of the ocean of Gaudiya Math, and there are many of them, not one of them is named Bhakti something Saraswati Maharaj. Saraswati is one of the names, and that was, of course, the name of Bhakti Siddhanta, Saraswati. So, as that name was honored, and they wanted to honor the Saraswati name also. They also wanted to honor the Prabhupada title. It was a later issue, but Sridhara Maharaj overruled on that one. And said, it's proper, this Vishnupad, Prabhupada, these are proper titles for disciples to refer to the Guru as, and so on. And it's different than his formal name. So at any rate, Keshava Maharaj liked that so much that he named all disciples Bhakti Vedanta this, Bhakti Vedanta that, Bhakti Vedanta this Maharaj, that Maharaj, across the board. So at any rate, he took sannyas, he became Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Prabhupada, and ended up doing something very spectacular the world over. And Sridhara Maharaj in the meantime was living humbly in Navadvip, he had his place. Keshav Maharaj helped him to get the land, and he was carrying on, and it was such that his successor, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Maharaj, once told that sometimes we did not even have enough rice to go around. It was so difficult sometimes that I thought of leaving. But before I left, I went and talked to the trees, and they would not let me go. As they were staying and not leaving, they convinced me to stay, something like that. He said. So very austerely, Sridhar Maharaj was living there, depending upon Krishna. In a way, Prabhupada was also depending on Krishna in a dynamic way, coming to America, living in New York, and chanting the holy name, and what would happen. It was very dynamic. Obviously, Sridhar Maharaj was in a more classical type of a dependent situation, living in Nadia. In the Dham, a few people had come, and there was assistance, and they had to live according to his standard of living, which isn't always bountiful in a material sense, in a physical sense. So there he was, like a covered jewel for quite some time, while the extraordinarily and brilliant sun-like campaign of Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, was shining all over the world, and its brightness, it shed light, you can say, on the personality, the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. This is Prabhupada's English translation of the very password in terms of the tattva, the philosophy, for entering into a proper understanding of Srimad Bhagavatam. Jiva Goswami used this term, Paribha Sutra. So this is one line, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, of one verse of the Bhagavatam, and he highlights it and says that the philosophy, the theology of the Bhagavatam orbits around this statement, that Krishna, it means, is the fountainhead of all avatars. He is Swami Bhagavan. So again, Prabhupada translated that into Krishna, comma. I think there's a comma there. The supreme personality of Godhead, which you find in his books over and over and over again. Almost, from an English point of view, it's redundant. It seems redundant, but he is chanting this mantra, this Paribhas Sutra, over and over and over again. Krishnadas, as an aside, Krishnadas Kaviraj refers to the Bhagavatam verse from Brahma Vimohan Leela in Brahma's prayers, where he glorifies Krishna, Brahma, and such that he describes Narayan as his Amsa, as he uses a similar term, Paribhas Shloka, of the Bhagavatam. It is the verse in the narrative of Krishna Leela, that Brahma Vimohan Leela is the narrative of Krishna Leela that plays out the sutra, the line, Krishna is the supreme personality of God. There it's shown in Vrindavan to Brahma that not only do that, yes, worlds emanate from Narayan. That's true. Universes expand from him like perspiration coming out of the pores of his skin. But Krishna, from him come innumerable Narayans, who then manifest innumerable worlds and innumerable Brahmas, and Brahma was seeing this. The power of the Aishvarya of Krishna compared to his own attempts to test the power of Krishna. by trying to steal his calves and cow boots. This is Brahma Vimohan. So Krishna's two Bhagavan Swami really comes out here. This is the Leela in which Prabhupada left the world also. He was absorbed in this Leela and translating it. He left the world in this. It's the very center part of the center, the Sakyarasa center of the Bhagavatam, and it's where again something that Prabhupada was at his campaign, bright and brilliant, like the sun, shed light on this principle. Krishna is God, and is at the encyclopedia. He is not the eighth incarnation of Narayan or Vishnu. He is the source of Narayan. He is the fountainhead. This is very, very important. I mean, Jiva Goswami has emphasized, as I've mentioned, very important to have in place. Krishna says it in the Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matasavam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddhabhava samandita. Knowing this, understanding this, Aham sarvasya prabhavo, I, Krishna says, am the source of everything. Everything comes from me. It means all the forms of the Godhead. I'm the source of all the Shaktis, and so the world, everything. I'm the source of the Veda, the Guru who reveals me. Everything comes from me. I reveal myself through these forms. Everything. I am Swami Bhagavan. There's nothing. That's it. Stops here. Anadi, Radhi, Govindam, Sarva Karanam. Anadi. We're talking about Anadi. Last couple days. Anadi Radhi, Govinda. Govinda is the cause of all causes. He's the beginning of all beginnings. And he's beginningless. Beginning of all beginnings, the cause of all causes. And Krishna says, knowing this, one has in place much of what they need to engage in Ragmarg. He says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samandita. Raga bhava samandita. One has the samvit, buddha, to the knowledge, to know what is the center or to know that which can take unlimitedly, which means now I know how I can give unlimitedly, because I have to be able to give to that which can take without limitation. This is what Krishna challenges in the Gita when he says that, what is the verse?
All that you do, all that you...
No. As they yetanam prapadyante tam tasaiva tataiva vajamiham. As they surrender to me, I can reciprocate accordingly. This is a statement. However you want eternal life, I can give you Brahman. You want material life, I can give you that. You want yoga studies, I can give you that. You want Bhakti, I can give you that. You want whatever. This is my challenge. However they approach. Gaudiya Vaishnavism says, okay, let's take him up on that. That's what Gaudiya Vaishnavism is. So if you don't know that, you can't take up Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And it's taken up most perfectly by the gopis, who said, okay, we're going to try it. What happened? Krishna said, I think I better become a gopi. Because I said I was the source of everything and I could reciprocate in kind in relation to however anyone approaches me. But your approach exceeds my capacity to reciprocate. It's glorious unto itself. I worship it. I'm defeated. This is Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So you have to know this about Krishna. You can't do this with Narayan, Varaha, Nrsimha. It's not possible. So a very important point. You have to know the two things. You have to know the source who can take unlimitedly, and then you have to give without any expectation, which are non-calculative bhakti, to use a term of Pujapad Sridhara Maharaj. Non-calculative means I don't make a calculation with my mind. I don't think about it, that this is God, therefore I should serve him. That's called Vaidhi Bhakti. I'm suffering, therefore I should serve. I don't want to die and again take birth, therefore I should serve. Maybe some place with that motivation in the beginning. We should have our ideal in Braj Bhakti, and approaching in that way, gradually the eligibility for Rag Bhakti will manifest, which constitutes a form of bhakti, or I should say participation in the angas of bhakti, hearing, chanting, remembering, that's taste driven, feeling driven. And this is where we enter, if you will, Pujapad Sridhara Maharaj in a sense, because Prabhupada's campaign was brilliant like the sun, lighting up the world everywhere in terms of making this point. And people are on the street corners chanting, Hare Krishna. A godbrother of mine, Maharaja Krishna Maharaj, once told me that his parents would tell him that, wherever they went, when they traveled, they meet these, devotees. And so one time they decided to take a trip to the Amazon, and they laughed. They said, at least we won't see, any of, our son's, crazy friends down there. And so they were on a boat ride in the Amazon. And they pulled up on the dock, and there was Ramsan Kirtan. Blew their minds, as you can imagine. They wrote their son about it. God, because we're in the Amazon. So this was Prabhupada's campaign. It was like that. Like the sun, nothing could hide from it, so to speak. We used to sell Prabhupada's books in the Chicago airport, which was one of the first airports that we legally sold books in. And I was very involved there. And there is, I still think, a famous basketball team in Chicago called the Chicago Bulls. And so they would come through the airport every now and then, because that was the home of their team. And I heard that the Bulls, when they came through, every time, every single one of them, that was asked to buy a book. And so they chuckled about it, and they came up with their best defense, and they called it the Hare Krishna defense. The Krishna defense. No one can get through without it. It was the passion to please Prabhupada on the part of his young disciples distributing his book. So this was his campaign, bright, brilliant like the sun. No one could hide from it, so to speak. And it became almost a household word, really. And therefore, there was the mission on the part of Swami that he has fulfilled the prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Putivikayakshi Japta Nagarari Gram Sarvata Pacharohipe Manam. My name will be heard in every town and village, and so forth. So, such was the nature of his campaign. He wanted to present Krishna as he is, and this was one of the main focuses. Two main focuses of Prabhupada's campaign, in one sense, are Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Advaita Vedanta is mental speculation. It does not follow it's not faithful to revelation. And by it, you cannot get Krishna Bhakti. It's against. Anyway, so this comes out in his writing. You're going to write a book or a commentary, you're going to assess your audience and so forth, and you're going to want to make certain themes. Prabhupada was breaking new ground in the Americas and Europe, and later on other parts as well, the Orient even, and throughout India as well, but particularly fresh ground in the West, and he appropriately understood that certain foundational principles have to be established and put in place, and In due course, more will come. There'll be other installments. Can't tell everybody everything at once. I was lecturing to some Hindu families, speaking to them in Charlotte, and making some nice points to them, and they were really appreciating it very much. And then they asked questions afterwards, and I could see that they couldn't understand the points entirely. What is Bhakti and what is Gyan? They liked it. They were moved, but it's complex, the theology of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's not simplistic like Advaita Vedanta, comparatively. It's very complex. I mean, to say that spiritual reality is the polar opposite of material reality is not hard to grasp. Attachment is the problem. Detachment is the solution. Move away from the perception of variety, which is false, to oneness. Okay. Then you come Gaudiya Vaishnavas, oneness and difference at the same time, and your head starts spinning around. We progress, you have to give up material life, but we progress not by vairagya, but by attachment to Krishna, not by detachment, but by attachment to Krishna. Make the Vedanta points, basically, they're not exclusive or the right of the property of the way to Vedanta, that the attachment to material objects is the source, is the womb from which suffering is born. Krishna says in the Gita, dukkha yunayavate. But we don't end there. And we offer a very positive way to arrive at that attachment by attachment to Krishna. So anyway, it's very complicated in comparison. So these are two of the main points you find in Prabhupada's writing over and over again. He wanted to establish this. And these are points that have to be in place, kind of foundational stones. And of course, he felt that more would come. A question was asked yesterday about the idea that some people felt that the ideas presented by Bhakti Vinod and ultimately by Prabhupada would seem to differ from the Goswamis. And as I was explaining, every other Acharya and all of Hinduism with regard to the anadi karma, beginninglessness of the world. If you have beginningless world cycles, you have to have beginningless karma, because the world is jivas, and jiva shakti and maya shakti brought together by karma. No karma, there's no connection between jivas and maya shakti. If there's no connection between them, if that connection has a beginning, the world cycles have to have a beginning. So that just doesn't work. So Bhaktivinoda talked about it a little differently. We were speaking about this, and someone made the suggestion that, well, I think what they've done, Bhaktivinoda, who started this, as we see it, as a preaching strategy, like the crack, I call it, in the cement, and when it gets to the way it's interpreted by some of Prabhupada's disciples, it's like the Grand Canyon of misconceptions. And people are falling, gopas and gopis are falling out of Leela in Goloka. It's a very problematic idea. At any rate, we've talked about it, but someone asked the question, I think it was Dulal representing someone else, that well, I think these are developments of the teaching. Developments of the teaching. They're improving on the idea. And when I mentioned there's a place for improving on the ideas, for shedding new light and so forth, but it's not about changing the ideas from yes to a no, from nadi karma to no nadi karma. That's not improving on the idea. You have to improve on the idea of nadi karma by way of explaining it in relation to the times in which you live, and perhaps also in relation to how a previous acharya might have said something, like Prabhupada said certain things about it. One way he talked about it sounds like karma is not a nadi. Other ways he talked about it, it is. Or there's no fall from Vaikuntha. Another place seems to say there was fall from Vaikuntha. So what we are doing is that very thing. We're taking the basic idea, sorting out what the core, fundamental, foundational, philosophical principle is, and then clarifying it, shedding new light on it, explaining it from different angles and so forth, for an ongoing way. This is not what Bhakti was doing. He created a fashion, a preaching strategy, all of which preaching strategies have a life for a certain amount of time. And it very well may be the shedding of new light on the teaching, maybe to reveal, like Vishwanath Chakravarti did. What Jiva Swami said here about Swakiya, that's a preaching strategy. What Shankar has done, the Gaudiyas say, on the order of Vishnu, that's a preaching strategy. What Buddha has done, that was a preaching strategy. They didn't come out with the whole thing. The other day we were sitting in the room, and I looked, there's a Bible on the shelf. So I pulled out the Bible, I just opened it. And I opened the page, and for some reason, on the page, printed in the book, isn't it? There's a picture, black and white picture of two cowherds plowing the field with cows. I'm looking at the picture, and at the bottom of the left-hand page, there's the final verse of that page, and Jesus says something to the effect that, I have not told you everything. Now, there's much more to be said as well.
I think that if I said it all, the whole world would not be able to contain it.
There we go. I think that if I said it all, the whole world would not be able to contain it. That's a fact. It's about Sakirasa and came to me at the time. So there we find it also in Christianity. So now here's an example. Prabhupada, like the sun, right, revealing Krishna's two Bhagavan Swami, Krishna as he is, which was his term, as he is. In other words, Krishna is, Prabhupada's as it is very much in response to, like, Radha Krishna, Prime Minister, a previous President or Prime Minister of India, who was a scholar and a Hindu, and he wrote, when Krishna says, surrender unto me, in Bhagavad Gita, he says in his commentary, it's not to Krishna that we should surrender, but to the Krishna within, the unborn that you are. Prabhupada really didn't like that explanation. He said, no, as Krishna is saying it as he is, it's to him. He's real, he's a person, and by the way, he is the fountainhead of all forms of the Godhead and so forth. This was his emphasis. So he, like a brilliant sun, his campaign shed light everywhere on Krishna as he is. And in the darkness, if you will, of his departure from the world. Some of us had the fortune to be in the shadows, but the light, the moonlight, reflective light of Pujapad Sridhara Maharaj, who reflected for us on this philosophical principle that is the foundational point of tattva, Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna as he is, reflected on that for us, which was his preoccupation, in terms of Krishna as he feels. How does he feel? This is who he is. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How does he feel? In other words, there's two components here. There's the tattva and there's the bhava. In tattva, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that statement is the tattva key or hub around which the philosophy and theology of the Bhagavatam orbits. But the book is also a book of feeling. And feeling and philosophy. So the feeling, and that side is, of course, he feels that, I think Radha loves me. What do you think, Subal? Is it true? And what is it in me that she feels that makes her the way she is? These kind of things. How does Krishna feel? This is the way in which Pujapad Sridhara Maharaj, in a soothing and cooling way, because it was rather a soothing and illuminating way, I should say, like the moon illuminates the night. Prabhupada was brilliant like the sun, and you can't get too close to it. What he was doing, his campaign was huge. Once Govinda Maharaj told me that I would go sometimes on an errand with Guru Maharaj to see Swami Maharaj, Prabhupada, and his in Mayapur, bring some message, and this GBC is coming and giving a message, and this order is going there. I thought it was like Brahma. You know? And all the gods coming, and orders going everywhere. Our Guru Maharaj just sitting here. Interestingly, of course, all this limelight was on Prabhupada. Not that he brought the light on himself, but his campaign, by his example, he commanded respect by just his actions. Sridhara was very happy for it. Happy. What could he do? You know, to assist. He was older than Prabhupada by a couple of years, and infirm comparatively. He was physically almost blind, so he didn't see how he could really add anything, even though Prabhupada sometimes asked him. He thought, what am I going to do there? You've got all these sannyasis, and I'm probably going to pass away any time now. You know, before him, he's like going everywhere, all over the world. You know, he's going to live to be 108. This was his simple thinking, and fair enough. And but at any rate, Prabhupada, to his surprise, passed away before him and opened the door for his disciples to go to Tripurari. So there, you know, we enter, and with the setting of the sun of Prabhupada's campaign, then out of nowhere, except out of what the sun does, the sun lights up the moon. It seems to set, but it's the sun's light that reflects on the moon, and it gives some relief, if you will, some light, and soothing, a different kind of light, a reflective light in the dark night, if you will, of the disappearance of Prabhupada. We were illumined by the moon-like cooling, and the moon can be approached more readily than the sun. Prabhupada was encircled by this Aishvarya of his campaign. It was hard to get close to him, like it's hard to get close to the sun. Many of his disciples never spoke a word to him. Some of them never met him personally. So it was an intense campaign, and a lot of Aishvarya, given the nature of the service, worldwide campaign and so forth. And he would dress himself very nicely also, given the attire of a sannyasi. He wanted the sannyasis to be dressed nicely for preaching in the world and representing the tradition, you know, in the way Western people would feel it was appropriate to dress, not like some sadhu who's naked or, but that's Sridhara Maharaj. You know. Here he's described Devam Divyatanum, Suchanda Varanam Balarka Chelan Chitan Sandranandapuram, Sarika Varanam Bhagavan. Shri Siddhanta Nimimsu Bhakti, Nimimsu Bhakti Lasitam Sarasvatam. This obeisances to Sridhara Maharaj, whose countenance is especially beautiful and kind, who is able to present the highest ontological truths in the most pleasing poetic style. His transcendental figure is decorated with fine garments radiating like the morning sun. Well, that's, you know, in the subjective internal vision of whoever wrote this. Maybe Bhakti Sundar Govinda Maharaj. You know. The fact of the matter is he garbed himself in robes of a disinterested nature in the world, a disinterested nature. And it showed up physically in the way he dressed. Prabhupada was clean shaven and always had his head shaved regularly. You know, as you could see him with a head of hair and a beard, and every now and then he all shaved up and grow again, and tattered cloth, and so forth.
Bathrobe for a coat.
Yeah, bathrobe. You can see there's a picture of him standing with Prabhupada and some off with the bathrobe, bathrobe and stick. Like this, you know. Whoa, little this guy in the public, you know, kind of thing, you know, appearance-wise. This was again part of his disinterested nature, disinterested in worldliness, disinterested in followers, in reputation and fame, which made him famous amongst the God brothers. Amongst the God brothers, many of whom were going out and initiating and establishing missions and preaching and making disciples. And the fact that Sridhar Maharaj was not doing that in no way made him lesser in their minds. It made them question, am I doing this for pratishtha? To get fame and recognition myself? I have to be careful about that. He doesn't have any of that. We know that. And he's staying in the background. They used to come, every single sannyasi god with their Sridhar Maharaj, when they came to his mat, they would pay obeisances to him on the road outside the gate of the mat before entering in. He was very much known for this, for his disinterested nature, no pratishtha. Pratishtha is the basis of all anarthas, desire to be adored, acknowledged, to have some position, some standing. When he was asked, he had already separated himself from the quarreling of Gaudiya Math, but still they came to him. They had their GBC, still they came to him. And when they asked him, what is your opinion? Should some say that Ananta Vasudeva should be the take the position of the Acharya? Because some have that opinion, because Guru Maharaj Bhaktisiddhanta said so many things about him. You can't find one disciple amongst Bhaktisiddhantas who more compelling things were said about by their Guru Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur than Ananta Vasudeva. There's a book published, so many of the statements of Bhaktisiddhanta. Everybody's got one or two here, you know. Yes, he will do everything, you know. And this one and that one, he can never be converted. And this, Ananta Vasudeva had a book of them, and those kind of statements. So some people felt he should be the Acharya, and some others who were sannyasis, which Ananta Vasudeva was not. He was a brahmachari. They felt they should be acharyas, like Tirtha Maharaj and some others. And so there was this divide. And it was brought to Sridhar Maharaj. So he said, well, I'll give you my objective opinion, not just an opinion, but it may be that the sannyasis who want to be acharya have some pratishtha, because it's often the fact that some pratishtha goes with this sannyasi. Readily, it comes to you, you get position, it gives you a position, so then people treat you as if you have a position, and you might start thinking that you do, when actually you're just a jiva, and whatever power you do have is derived from mercy of your gurus and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and so on and so forth. But you can, and we've seen it happen in our time, can go to someone's head. And so he said, it's possible that they may be somewhat influenced by pratishtha, which is a problem. And meanwhile, the other one, he doesn't have the desire, and he's a brahmachari, and others are promoting him and not promoting himself. So you might think of it like that. That was his suggestion, his objective. And of course, they split and went different ways and so forth. And in due course, there were some problems on both sides, and they were successful ones. Sridhar Maharaj was successful. Prabhupada was successful. He wasn't in the mix. Sridhar Maharaj wasn't in the mix either at the time. Keshav Maharaj, he was in the mix. He was one of the sannyasis, but he was successful. There are others as well. Ananta Vasudeva ultimately wasn't successful, but he, for a long time, carried the majority of people. Even Prabhupada used to refer to them as Puri Maharaj, and hindsight is 2020, so probably criticized him too before his departure and so forth. Prabhupada, I think he had tried to respect both sides, Tirtha Maharaj and Vasudeva. But at any rate, the disinterested nature of Sridhar Maharaj is what we're discussing, and how it's a good quality. So no one thought that he wasn't going out preaching, except some of Prabhupada's foolish disciples. He's not doing any preaching. Who is he? He was doing bhajan and navadvip. That's not so easy either. You should try that. He did preaching. He did for Bhakti Siddhanta, travel around India. And so, even though it was against his nature, he was chosen to go to America first. And he said he would go. But he offered Bhakti Siddhanta these points. He said, I'm not very outgoing in my nature. Others are more like that than me, may require that. I don't interact well with the public, being an introverted person. There are others amongst us who speak better English than I do. And I think that you may not be here that long, and I could take advantage of your personal association. So I prefer to stay here, but if it's your order, of course I will go. So Bhakti said, you stay. And then somebody else to go. He said, I chose Sridhar Maharaj originally because I know he could never be converted. So, so this disinterested nature was a very good quality of his. And you can see, without making any effort, he became famous all over the world. Prabhupada made effort not to make himself famous, but to make Chaitanya Mahaprabhu famous. He was empowered by Nityananda to do so, as understood by Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj. They have different natures, but both of them are celebrated the world over amongst the Paribar. And it's many extended members throughout the countries of the world. In every mission, there's at least somebody that's reading Sridhar Maharaj books, if not in the closet, in broad daylight, and appreciating, and so forth. So he was like to us, like the moon. He was reflecting and taught us in his own reflection to reflect on what Prabhupada taught us. What is the significance of that? What is the implication of that? Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the Tattva. This is how he is. How does he feel? How does he feel in Vrindavan? Not in Dwarka or Mathura. How does he feel? How is he different from Narasimha or Narayan? What are his feelings? What are the qualities? What is the types of love? What motivates him? What turns him on? These kind of things. And very nicely done also. This is from a person who's very overtly detached from physical amendments and necessities, and from subtle things of desire for company, emotional support, followers, and so forth. Very tastefully, I want to say, he spoke about Krishna as he feels, and he did it often in ways. Once I was asked by a godbrother of mine, Giriraj Maharaj, how is it that Sridhar Maharaj talked about the highest things in such a way that people didn't get confused who weren't qualified to hear about them? And I said, well, one of the things he did, he spoke about the lowest things in the highest way. That was very powerful. He talked about basic principles philosophically, and how those were underlying the Braj Leela. They were the ground of the Braj Leela, like I say, the canvas on which the art of the Leela is drawn. And then segue into the Leela a little bit, and how it feels, and so forth. So it was always with an appropriate philosophical kind of underpinning. He didn't just sit and tell stories about Krishna and the gopis and so on and so forth, and tell you to memorize them, repeat them, and so forth, but to penetrate, you feel like he was standing on the ground and talking about it from there, standing on the ground in the Braj and speaking about it, what it means, and how it feels in relation to what it means and the implications of it, and so forth. So it was very powerful. It it wasn't just a head. It wasn't just a heart without a head. So it was. He continued, if you will, with Prabhupada obviously emphasized certain philosophical points. So he also emphasized those, but in a way that they were easily understood in terms of there being part of the ground on which the Leela is arising out of. And of course, the ideal of Sri Rupa, what is a Rupa Nuga, fullest sense of the term? What is a Radha Dasyam? I mean, these things are there in Prabhupada's books, but they're not things that his disciples were able to draw out very readily from them. And neither they emphasized. There are certain things that are emphasized, and I mentioned some of them. There are some other things. And there are ways in which Prabhupada talked about certain things. Sridhar Maharaj was developing that for us. He's an example of what you were asking about. He was actually developing it and doing what, telling more than what Jesus said, what he was prepared to say at the time. I was talking to the Indian community, and I realized, I felt like, wow, at some point, really, this was how Prabhupada must have felt in Los Angeles in 1970, and he's explaining Krishna consciousness to us. And he's thinking, well, tell him this part, I'll tell him this. And he realized, holy cow, there's just so much more they're not ready to hear right now. And one lady asked me a question, said, just keep listening, keep coming, you'll get it over time. Just further explanation is not going to be helpful. Take some beads, chant, take prashadam, get them active, do some service, and so forth. You're not hiding anything purposely, but you realize, wow, I've got some patients, they're sick. I'm giving them a prescription of a little bit of fasting and a little bit of diet, but I'm not giving them fried foods right now. Right? I'm not giving them fried foods. I'm giving them a little khichdi, take a little khichdi, chapati, very nourishing, very good. A little ghee on top, that's okay. But I'm not giving pakoras and samosas and, a little bit. He used to emphasize, Prabhupada, read the first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam first. And someone asked him, Prabhupada, you say that all the time, but why didn't you give the Krishna book first? He said, you got to give a taste of what's to come, just otherwise you wouldn't be here at all. So it's not that he didn't explain the Krishna in Vrindavan, but you can see many of his disciples didn't understand the difference between Vrindavan and Dwarka and Mathura and Krishna and the Sringadev, practically. Not his fault. Those things are explained in his books. But in sadhusanga, where you're caused to reflect on and ask, what do you know? Sridhar would ask us questions. What do you know? What have you understood? What is your understanding? He asked him questions. What is your understanding? And he would see the level of our understanding. And then he would take from there and explain and embellish and so forth. This is the role of the Siksha Guru. You could not have found a better person to be a Siksha Guru for Prabhupada's disciples than Sridhar Maharaj. There is absolutely no better fit. Who knew him so intimately, greeted him, Prabhupada, when he came to Mayapur in his gamsha. He didn't get all dressed up. Sridhar was going to get dressed up. My buddy is coming over. He's seen me in my gamsha plenty of times. Sridhar Maharaj told that story. I said, because I can understand. He had affection for me. And so lived with him, knew him, helped him when others tried to impede Prabhupada from getting land in Mayapur for his Western disciples. Sridhar Maharaj helped him. And so always favorable to the movement, always there when Chitananda wrote to Prabhupada and he said, I think I need, you're in America, I'm here. I think I need a Siksha Guru. And Prabhupada wrote to him, if you want a Siksha Guru, you can go to my God, to be our Sridhara Maharaj Navadvip. But speak of what you can learn from him, I consider him my Siksha Guru. And so he stayed there for several months, quite some time, under the guidance of Sridhara Maharaj. And when Prabhupada came back to India, went right over seamlessly. Prabhupada, there was no friction and he trying to steal Prabhupada's disciple or anything of this sort, fully supportive. And he always had Chitananda still does much affinity for Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj and what he learned there and so forth. And he was cool in that way. He had something different about him, he had some side of Prabhupada that others didn't have because he had association with someone who had a relationship with Prabhupada like nobody else had amongst his disciples, an intimate relationship. This gives you a certain perspective. Some people think that persons like myself who took shelter at Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj as a Siksha Guru, that we left Prabhupada and we're at the loss or something. We're actually, whatever they know about Prabhupada, I also know. I know his books, and I know his person, and his mission and how it works and all that. I know all that stuff. Not lost on me. But I also know Prabhupada through the eyes of Sridhar Maharaj. And they don't know that. And that's a very charming side also. And it's the more, it's more. You're finding out he's like a gem. He has many facets, and you look from different sides. So when you look from Sridhar Maharaj's side, you see, he's like this. And my perspective is a little different than Sridhar Maharaj's. As a disciple of Prabhupada, this is this position of a non-envious and pure, as Prabhupada said when he introduced him to us in Mayapur the first time, and they famous picture of the two of them sitting on Prabhupada's Vyasasana. I have known from the very beginning he's a pure devotee of Krishna and so forth and so on. So that kind of a godbrother. It's valuable to have that kind of association. He pressed us to understand what Prabhupada had given us, what are the implications of that in his absence, and what should be done in his absence to make him present. And it wasn't some artificial fanatical campaign that tried to do away with the Guru Parampara in the name of making him present by saying he hasn't gone anywhere, he's here right now, he's in his books, all we need to do is read his books, we don't need to do initiation. Or you need someone just officially connect you with him because he's here. These are all these artificial ways that are not scripturally based to keep Prabhupada present, actually distances those who embrace them from all that Prabhupada is and represents and so forth. It distances them in a very serious way because it often, unfortunately, as we've seen, has caused people to then make offense to someone like Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, who's so dear to Prabhupada, who's there to help us by Prabhupada's arrangement. He said that, and I was massaging his feet at the time, late September of 1977, just a few weeks before he left the world. He was asked that if we should pass away, how we perform the funeral. Because we didn't know that, and he had written about that, those rituals. And Prabhupada said, for that you can ask Narayan Maharaj in Mathura. And so Tamal Krishna Maharaj had asked the question, and then he said, Prabhupada, after you depart, is there anyone else we consult with? And he said, for philosophy, my God, whether it be our Sri Maharaj of Navadvip. So he, the one, cracked the door for that. That's why after Prabhupada departed, the entire GVC in Mayapur in 1978, when they met a few months after Prabhupada's departure, they all went to Sridhara Maharaj to get counsel on how to carry on the Guru Parampara. Unfortunately, they didn't listen very well and ended up offending him and so forth. That's very unfortunate. But that's a consequence of, as I say, trying to keep Prabhupada in present in ways that are not supported by scripture that distance you from Prabhupada and may cause you to make offense, distance you that much further from Bhakti, and so on. Whereas the proper way on its face puts him to the side, but in reality acquaints one with him in the invisible world, on the deeper level, so to speak. So in other words, the Guru Parampara, another Guru must come and take prominence and so forth. And Sridhara Maharaj was an example. I mean, he didn't look for it, but he just became the natural Siksha Guru for Prabhupada's disciples. Some of them understood that, took advantage, some didn't. And he became for those of us who did, he became very prominent. Here we are celebrating his appearance today, very prominent in my life. But the idea that because Sridhara Maharaj became prominent in my life, and even, I would go to Sridhara Maharaj rather than to, Prabhupada's temple. Of course, I wasn't allowed to go to Prabhupada's temple in Mayapur, but that kind of thing. To think that Prabhupada's being displaced, he's being distanced from Prabhupada, is to misunderstand the way in which you actually keep the Acharya, your Guru, present in his apparent absence, not by artificially making him physically present and in turning his the details that he put in place to preach, turning them into principles in the name of keeping here, which ends up freezing the whole dynamic of preaching and bringing new light according to time and circumstance. Not like that, but to go inside and understand him internally, from knowing that the Guru, Prabhupada, for example, is directly Krishna's representative. And that's what we hear from a lot of it. Whatever he says is directly coming from Krishna. He's Sakshat Hari. We heard Sakshat Hari, that's true. But what about Kintu, but, however, Kintu Prabhoya Priyavatasi? This we heard from Sridhara Maharaj. That's the other half of the line, right? Sak Vishwanath Thakur prays the Guru. Sakshadvaitena Samasta Shastre. The Guru is directly Hari, Sakshat Hari, and all the scriptures says. This makes you go, whoa, God is speaking here, represented here, in representational sense, we understand, but still, this should be honored and respected. And if you really have that in place, then you can start to gradually understand the second part of it. Kintu Prabhoya Priyavatasi. However, but he's also dear to Krishna. So how can he be Krishna and be dear to Krishna? He's Krishna in a representational sense and should be honored as such. But if you approach him with all honor and proper philosophical understanding, in due course you see that he actually is the embodiment of a certain type of love of Krishna. And you tell me, what is more important, Krishna or love of Krishna? Gaudiya perspective is Jai Radhe. Love of Krishna is more important than Krishna, because you can't really separate the two, but one begets the other is the point. In love of Krishna, there you will find Krishna. Krishna's there. Without love of Krishna, there's no Krishna. So, love of Krishna, this is how Krishna feels. This was more the emphasis of Sridhara Maharaj, and encouragement, and very appropriately so, that this is where you have to venture internally to keep him present. And in the meantime, in the present, externally, draw upon that and all that he said by reflecting deeply upon that, the implications of that. And as that comes to crystallize and give you new insight, then you start to share that. And new insight. It's not you just repeat what you've heard and sometimes I think if he says only what Prabhupada says, then he's bona fide. If he says anything other or different or more, then he can't be bona fide. No, it's the opposite. Should say the more. That's the whole idea of the Guru Parampara. bring it out, not something that's new, but more of what it is, more explanation in light of the new circumstances and so forth. And if nothing else, circumstances are very different when such a great personality passes away. What to speak of now we're, whatever it is, 40, 50 years later, and things have changed a lot. So this is the really, I mean, I had the direct experience of what the Guru Parampara was. You know, I told the story that in that same period, in September, I was there in 77 with Prabhupada, and we had shifts where we would chant. I think this was in May. I went in May, and anyway, one of the times we had shifts for chanting for 24-hour kirtan. My shift was from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. So I was the only one, and then Prabhupada's assistant was there. And so I was chanting the Maha Mantra and with kartals, and I was just saying Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And I had, my focus was, in one sense, I don't want to like do some fancy musical type of kirtan, but this is a melody I've heard from Prabhupada, and I want to just chant a melody that came from his lotus mouth, and not be in danger of turning into some kind of fancy musical thing, and you know whatnot, which can happen. And so, sincerely, I was chanting, and I was thinking, Prabhupada, you know, please, my prayer was to keep me connected with the Guru Parampara. And Prabhupada looked, this is like, you know, 3 in the morning, 1 in the morning, Prabhupada got up, you know, leaned up, looked, and said, and his assistant came, the guy was at his feet, his assistant came to his head, and he said, who is that chanting? He said, oh, that's Tripurari. And Prabhupada looked at me and nodded like this, and he went back. And when I met Sridhara Maharaj, and that all came to me, that, you know, you remember certain things certain time, and I didn't say, oh, he gave me the blessing. Here I am, experiencing. And it's in the midst of, where's the Guru Parampara? No. Prabhupada left, these people saying they're the gurus, Prabhupada wanted them to be, but there's problems with the representation and so forth. And here, without making any effort, and Prabhupada said, for philosophy, go to Sridhara Maharaj. All these things came back and ringing. And I could understand, oh, Prabhupada gave me the blessing. And this is what it's like. And it's exciting. It's not just some formal thing that you do. I guess I got to get initiated by somebody. Get that over with so we can get on with following Prabhupada. And then, you know, it was like dynamic and new. And like, whoa, Prabhupada said it like this. He says it like this. Whoa, that's different. He interprets this verse this way. And that's Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada interprets this way. And that's Krishna conscious. And Krishna conscious is bigger than I thought it was. So the mind is exploding, the heart is beating, and there's Sridhara Maharaj with his disinterested nature, based on the Sridhara, his inner passion. He's the Sridhara. He's the bearer of Shri in his heart, the carrier of Shri, and Bhakti Raksaka. He's not giving her service to just anybody. He's protecting the Bhakti creeper, and Sridhar's, the famous Sridhar Swami of yore was, he was named after in a sense, and Bhakti Raksaka means protector. Sridhar Swami was the commentator in the Bhagavata, and the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so much revered. So his sannyas name was Sridhar, and his other part of his name is Bhakti Raksaka. Bhakti Raksaka means protector of Bhakti. So he's protecting it by giving the proper Siddhanta at a time where it was like in question and so forth. Proper Siddhanta, and in such a way that the higher ideal could be properly understood, not talked about, and properly understood, not misunderstood at a time when it was time to go more internally. The time, you know, some of my godbrothers were giving lectures as gurus, and the other side of the Mayapur, and it's just like, and we're going to take one and Krishna Sankirtan, really, lectures were just like very hollow for me. They were like these very just like rally the troops. What happened to the philosophy? I used to come every year to Mayapur The Prabhupada told me, every year you come and spend 1 month with me in Mayapur, Vrindavan. So I lived for that. Sometimes I'd see him also in America when he would come, but I could spend a whole month with him there. He would give a lecture every day, and then I would hear this like cheerleading kind of thing. And so I was drying up. When you hear just a word or two from Sridhara, it's like, and it's like, I wanted to drink, and I just got drowned. I got submerged in the nectar. This is auspicious. This feels like Prabhupada. This is coming from over here. Like Prabhupada once said, this parampara works like this. There's a tree, and the leaves fall from the tree, and they fall and blow in the wind in different places. But if you taste one leaf here, they taste the same, you know. It's coming from the same tree. When I tasted the nectar of Sridhara Maharaj's discourse, and I had the personal company of Sridhara Maharaj's persona, the overwhelming kindness and generosity, the care for the care he had for Prabhupada's mission and the state it was in, it imploding and so forth. It was so overwhelming and touching. And at the same time, his own inner life and his scholarship and so forth, and unassuming nature. Very powerful, very, very, very blessed. This was, like I said, getting drowned in nectar. He sat with us once, some of his young sannyasis, and as I said, Swami Maharaj's successor sometimes would take messages to Prabhupada and see the big campaign of Prabhupada and think Prabhupada really was it, wasn't he? He was really the one who fulfilled the mission of Bhakti Siddhanta, and our guru was great too, but wow, what Swami Maharaj is doing is incredible. But it was Swami Maharaj's, Prabhupada's disciples who came to Sridhara Maharaj with such intensity of wanting to know and understand the Gaudiya Vaishnavism and be connected substantially to the parampara in the absence of Prabhupada, that drew things out on his veranda from Sridhara Maharaj that even the Govinda Maharaj hadn't heard before. And he was thinking, our guru is pretty great too. I mean, think that, but then, you know, that he would be celebrated all over the world, like Prabhupada was, it really wasn't in their minds, although Sridhara Maharaj wrote a verse at the time of founding his moth, and wrote it on the flag that was hoisted. It said, and the glory of the Chaitanya Saraswati mountain is just flying all over the world. And they used to think, it's flying here, but all over the world, you know. It happened. And it happened by Prabhupada's arrangement, who sent his disciples there and drew him out, which Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur a couple of times told Prabhupada, you should draw Sridhara Maharaj out for preaching. So, and Sridhara Maharaj said, even after his departure, he pulled me out by bringing everybody here. I couldn't even go anywhere, but he brought everybody here, so many people, at my doorstep. So I have to share. That was the bargain, right, he made with Nityananda, how he understood Nityananda's response. I have to share my wealth that I have, which he thought was meager, but it was his humility. It was great. It was extraordinary and a very powerful, if you will, installment of Krishna consciousness in the Guru Parampara. And he, I asked him what service I could do. He said, Swami Maharaj, Prabhupada has told you everything. Go and start a mission and stand on the strength of your faith, and I'll be in the background. And sometime you can come here. But you can't stay here. You have to go out and do something. He would want that of you. So, in a humble way, we started, and here we are. Bhakti Swami Maharaj ki jai. Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Bhaktivinoda Parivar ki jai. Sri Gauranga Madhava ki jai. Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Haribo.
Bhaktivedanta Tripurari Swami Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Ananda Puri Vaishnava Vrinda ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanand.